You're listening to Stories Behind the Songs with Chris Blair. For more information, you can find us on Instagram and TikTok at SBT Songs, or check us out at chrisblair.com. Hey guys, Chris Blair here with another episode of Stories Behind the Songs, and this week I am sitting down with Blake Pendergrass. Blake is from North Carolina and has been in Nashville since 2013 with a very productive 10 years of experience so far in town. Blake's going to talk about his first connections here in Nashville, which led him to getting his first cut with none other than Morgan Wallen. His breakthrough came with 865, which is track 5 on Morgan's Dangerous album, which he co-wrote on Zoom during COVID with John Byron. You're going to hear Blake talk about that song catching Morgan Wallen's attention, which would lead him to his first publishing deal and 8 more cuts with Morgan. Blake's writing style resonates with artists like Morgan Wallen, Dustin Lynch, Jake Owen, Chase Rice, Chris Lane. You're going to hear stories behind several of his cuts for Morgan Wallen, the story behind Key West in Colorado, which is a song he wrote for Chase Rice, and an unreleased song called One of the Ways. Coming up on just 3 years since his first publishing deal, Blake's going to discuss the challenges of songwriting in a competitive industry and the dynamics between Nashville's community-oriented culture compared to LA's more strategic approach. We had a great time sitting down with Blake and just learned a ton about where the industry is going and changing from his perspective. Just a great episode. I hope you like it. Give Blake a follow. All the information is down below in our liner notes, so you can stay up to date with us here on Stories Behind the Songs podcast, as well as Blake. We also want to give a special shout out to our sponsors, Sennheiser, Imperfect Esthetician, and All Clear In-Ears. If you're looking for a great set of in-ear monitors, make sure to take advantage of our code SBTSongs at checkout, and you'll get 10% off. I use them. I love them. They're amazing. Go check them out. All right, let's get to it. Here is this week's episode with Blake Pendergrass. All right, here we are at the listening room with Blake. How you doing, man?
Doing good, man.
Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me. Yeah,
man.
Absolutely.
I know you've got to write today. You write pretty much every day now, right?
I do. Yeah. 5 days a week for the most part. Sometimes out on the road on the weekends and everything too.
Yeah, I love it. We're going to dive in. You've been in town since 2013. You're from North Carolina.
Yes, sir.
Take us back. Like, what brought you into music in the first place? How'd you get into it? And then what led that love of music get you to Nashville?
Definitely. Yeah. So I just did choir kind of stuff when I was in high school. That was my first introduction into music at all, and never really wrote or anything like that. I was just a singer, and the choir teacher, his name was Mr. Adams. He always told me I was a good singer, so I leaned into it a lot during high school and everything. And when it came time for college, my parents were actually the ones that encouraged me to go like chase down music just to see if I could make it work kind of thing. So I didn't know how you make money at it or anything like that. So I kind of moved here. And the first week I got here, there was a guy I met named Johnny Diaz, he was in the Christian music industry at the time and had a #1 as an artist. It was called More Beautiful You. And so I reached out to him and asked him to kind of sit down and talk to him about how he did it. And he kind of walked me through what his journey up to that point had been and how he'd written that song and written hundreds of other ones that nobody had ever heard. And it kind of just opened my eyes to the fact that, like, you don't have to be good at writing songs every time you write a song. It's just you have to get some of them right kind of thing. And he really did encourage me to, like, just start down that path and start writing. So I started writing a lot by myself at Belmont University where I went and did that and learned from that community, I guess, how they had kind of risen, and met a good close friend named John Byron, who him and I have been writing together ever since, every Monday, which is the write I got at 11 with John Byron. So still doing it every Monday and everything with him. And so from there, it's just kind of all gone upwards a little bit. But yeah.
Well, I mean, you've been doing it right. So you've been in town just barely over 10 years.
Yeah, that's right.
And I mean, you've got, we talked about it in the intro before this started, but you've got like 9 cuts by Morgan Wallen. You got cuts by Jake Owen, Chase Rice, Dustin Lynch. Like, just, I mean, for the success that you've had in a very short amount of time, because everybody says like Nashville's a 10-year town.
For sure, yeah.
Maybe 20 years ago they used to say it's 5-year town, but now it's just, it's saturated and it's like, once you got here, like what started that snowball effect of, all of these cuts that you've got so quickly?
Definitely. Yeah. For me, it was a lot of the just like time being here. I mean, me and JB, we wrote so much for so many years before anybody cared about it. We wrote for about 7 years before anybody paid attention to it. And I think over that period of time, just from people we were meeting and just like as everybody around us also spent more time here, people just started having more success individually, and that network, I guess, became more powerful. You know, so JB had a guy that we'd both gone to college with named Mike Giangreco that was the original kind of like finder of me and JB both. He listened to a song that turned into 865 by Morgan, and he was at the time like he had just gotten to a place at a record label called Big Loud that he was able to kind of make something happen. And so JB had sent him a song or a batch of songs, and that one was in there, and Mike showed it to the record label head, Seth England, and who eventually showed it to Morgan. And so that was the real big spark for me and JB both, like to get our careers going. And from there, that song was placed prominently on Dangerous album, like it was track 5, which that was like a huge blessing when it happened. You know, I remember when we got it recorded in general, we were like, oh, it's going to be like the last song on the album. Like we just couldn't believe it because neither of us had publishing deals or anything at the time.
Yeah.
And so we didn't have much expectation, but when it got recorded and put on that album in that place, that really made a big splash in the music industry. I think from like people were just wondering who we were because nobody had heard our names before. And so after that, I had the opportunity to both sign a deal. So JB signed with Big Loud, I signed with Rakai Marshall. And then from there, our publishers really helped us expand our network and use that original cut, that Morgan song, to kind of give people a reason to write with us. You know, that we're like the big high up writers and everything, just to see what we were capable of. Yeah. Really. It was just, I think, more out of curiosity. A lot of people were writing with us than anything.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely is about the camp. You know, like you've got to build your camp in town.
Definitely.
And I mean, you've done a great job of that. Let's go back. Let's dive in a little bit more of 865.
Yeah.
Take me into the writer's room, because that's a great song. And with that being your first cut before even having a pub deal.
Yeah.
You know, how did the idea come about? Like, just walk us through it.
For sure. Yeah. So me and JB wrote that during COVID. So it was just a two-way songwriting session. We were, like I said, we didn't have publishing deals, but originally that was supposed to have a published songwriter on it. And we were both like excited about that because that was a huge opportunity at the time. But that person fell off because of COVID. And so me and JB hopped on Zoom. We were both he was in an apartment and I was in an apartment. We were just literally in our bedrooms in our apartments, separate apartments, writing on Zoom. And the idea originally came, I just was sitting there. I remember I was just sitting there listening to music before the session, trying to prepare for it and everything. And I had heard a song that like I discussed, like the concept of it, like underlying was like talking about drinking and like how like when I drink, it turns into like calling you kind of thing, you know? And so I thought it would be cool to like when I heard that, I was like, it'd be cool to just write a song about like a phone number, you know, and just like to have the number be like the thing that tastes like the alcohol. For some reason it made sense, and it's kind of like a crooked idea, I guess, when you really think about it. But for some reason it made sense, and I brought it into JB, and it was originally 919, which is like Raleigh, North Carolina, where I'm from, was the area code for it. And then we just wrote it. You know, it wasn't some like spectacular, oh my gosh, we did it kind of moment. You know, it was like, because we didn't have anything going on. We were just like two guys trying to write the coolest stuff we could write together. And we weren't trying to write a hit. We weren't trying to write anything special. We were just hanging out and trying to make the best song we could make that day. And that's kind of how it happened. So
how'd Morgan hear it?
Morgan heard it from Mike. So Mike Giangreco sent it to Seth England, and Seth is Morgan's manager and like the label head at Big Loud. And Seth, I will to this day, like he's the person that I think is the most willing to take a shot on people that nobody else has heard of, you know? And like as two writers that never had any success, he didn't care about that. He just listened to the song. He said, this is a good song and Morgan needs to hear it. And it was regardless of who wrote it. And I still think to this day, that's one of the coolest things that's the core of Nashville, I think, is like being able to show up and like, if you got something that's worth noting, then people will notice it. You know, I still believe in that. And so he sent it to Morgan, and Morgan heard it and loved it and just recorded it, you know, and that's speaks to Morgan too, to take a shot on a song that unknown people had written, you know? Yeah. So,
Well, he's a great writer himself. And I mean, like, you know, he's built up an amazing camp around him with Tenpenny and Hardy and, you know, all the guys that he writes with. Yeah. But I think that's what's great about him too, is that he being a great songwriter, he knows a great song when he hears it. Definitely. It's just like, hey, you know, the fact that he doesn't have to be the writer on it.
For sure. Yeah. That's huge.
Speaks loud. Yeah.
Absolutely. It means, I mean, to me, that always represents somebody that's like very serious about their career and is willing to just elevate whatever it takes to elevate. They're willing to do, and I think that's Morgan in a nutshell. He's always got the ability to like see the bigger picture and do what he needs to do. Yeah.
So he took it, and then obviously he grew up in East Tennessee, so he changed the area code to 865.
That's right. And it worked out. We always, when we wrote it, like again, we had no idea what it would turn into, but we were like, oh, maybe somebody could turn it to 615 because the Nashville area code. But we never thought about 865 when we wrote it.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
You've got an awesome story about another Morgan cut, 180 Lifestyle.
Yeah.
Just crazy story on that.
Yeah.
Walk us through that one.
That one was fun. So it was more chaotic than any other songwriting session that I've ever had. So there was, on the books, it was supposed to be me, Ashley Gorley, Charlie Handsome, and Rocky Block were on the schedule for that day. And when I showed up, at least, I showed up, I guess, a little bit early. Ernest was in there with Charlie, and they were just going through loops, going through just beats and stuff like that, or just songs in general. And one came on that Ernest started doing just a freestyle rap thing over it, which is kind of his thing he loves to do. And he started doing what we figured out was like an interpolation of a Young Thug song that was called Lifestyle. But he was just doing the flow for it, and me and Rocky were just there sitting there trying to kind of like assist in him piecing that together, because as he's doing it, it's just like he's constantly singing the same melody over and over again over the same like 16 bars or whatever to try and fill it in. And so we were filling it in with words and everything. He finally locked it in. In about like 10 to 15 minutes, we had like a chorus that we were running with. And the Ernest had to leave because he wasn't on the, like, he just had to go somewhere. I don't know where he went, but he just said, I got to go. You guys can mess with that if you want. And if not, it's totally fine. And so he walks down the stairwell and runs into Ashley Gorley and tells him, he's like, go up there and like keep working on it. I think it's really good. So Ashley comes in and we like piece together a verse and a second verse and everything. And at one point, Mark Holman came in and it was like a 6-person write technically by the end of it all. And so we finished it, and then Charlie built up the track and everything, and Morgan heard it and loved it. Seth heard it and loved it. And we had to get it cleared because like I said, it was like using a bit of a Young Thug song. And so in order to get it cleared, the story I've been told is that the demo it was like me singing the verses and Ernest singing the chorus on the demo. And that demo was sent to Young Thug in jail, I believe, is what I was told, that he was like literally, he had to hear the song to clear it. And so that's how it apparently happened. He heard the demo and said it was all good, and the rest is history. It's on the Morgan album and everything. So it kind of, that's probably one of the crazier stories for sure that is happening from songwriting.
Yeah, but I love it, man. What is a favorite song that you've written? Man. I ask this all the time, and I know it's so hard because it depends on the season or that you're in or whatever. But I always love to hear, like, is there a favorite, and does that correlate into something that's been released or something that's still in your back pocket that you play like at writers' rounds here?
Yeah, I think there's a bit of both to it. I think that it's interesting as time goes on, like the songs that get released become almost more dear to you just because people like them. You know, it's like those become, so there's definitely like, I think like Dying Man, as far as like songs that have been released, has been one of my favorites that I've written for sure, just because it feels like it has like an emotion that it captures an emotion that I'm like glad to have been able to put into words, which is like the concept of like, I don't know, like I feel like throughout my life I've had like, whether it's my mom or like even my publishers, or like strong women are like important in my life. And like, I feel like that song in particular kind of captures that emotion. But as far as unreleased ones, I mean, there's one I used to play a good bit called One of the Ways that I wrote by myself, that one is pretty special to me. Just it's been on hold. It's been cut a handful of times by people. It just hasn't made its way out yet. It's one of those that I still believe hopefully will one day. But that one is just kind of like, from the premise of it, I think there's a bit of like, I'm a big faith-based person, you know, like God's important in what I do. And I feel like that one was one of the times where I really felt like it was just like kind of like God handing me a song and saying, this needs to be said. And so I think that to me is really special when that kind of thing happens, where you just kind of feel like you're taking part in something bigger and you don't know what the reason is, but you just kind of like, you get something and it kind of comes through you and you're like, okay, well, that wasn't me that did that, you know, but that's the kind of thing that I like the most when I'm doing songwriting. That's what keeps me going every time. But
I love that, man. I've got a song that is very special to me that I wrote that is very similar to that. It's like God took the pen that day.
Yeah, absolutely.
What is that song about? Let's dive into it a little bit.
Man, so it sounds dark, but it's actually it's interesting. It's called One of the Ways, and it's the whole premise of it is called, it's like, that's just one of the ways we remember you. And it's like, I kind of wrote it. It sounds crazy, but in the creative process, I try to use like imagination quite a bit. And it was almost from the premise of like imagining if I died young or something like that. I was imagining what I wanted my friends to do in remembrance of me was what I was writing that song from a place of. So it was like the way I was writing that is almost like if your friends did this after you died, then that means you lived a life that meant something. It was kind of like the whole premise of it. And so it was like the song is kind of like, like we smoke cigarettes in the parking lot at Hardee's and leave an open space at the booth just because it's one of the ways we remember you. It's like we sit there and cheer for 22 at football games because that was your number, like stuff like that. And so I felt like that was a cool way to almost like explain how to live a meaningful life with like that idea.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
You want to play a part of it?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Let's see. We ain't awash in money, but we pop one Miller Lite and pour it in the grass when we get together with the guys. And then we raise up all them bottles like we're trying to touch that moon. It's just one of the ways we remember you. We sit front row on the bleachers at that Millbrook senior game. Every single season, win or lose, shine or rain. It's a different kid that wears the jersey, but we cheer for 22. It's just one of the ways we remember you. It ain't like we could forget you, but it's better safe than sorry. So we peel the tires and drive our Chevrolets like they're Ferraris. Then we drive as fast as we can, same way you used to like to. It's just one of the ways we remember you.
Man, it's so good.
Yeah.
that hits right now. I just lost a good friend of mine.
Man.
And
sorry to hear that.
I want to keep moving on because I don't want to bring it down, but like my best friend that I've known for years, I will have to talk offline and get a copy of that because I'd love to play that for my boys.
Absolutely.
And, yeah. It's a great song, man.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. All right, let's go back into some stories. So, what about, again, you've got so many cuts in such a small time.
Thank you.
How, obviously 9 with Morgan, you got a good role going there. And like, once you have a good couple in the industry with an artist, they're more open to seeing that. So
for sure.
But also like with Chase and Jake and like, the other doors that opened up, was that all through the publisher?
It was. So the Morgan stuff and the that was a lot because of my publisher and JB and Big Loud. They all kind of like, once that 865 song happened, everybody kind of like, Big Loud's a family, and like I was welcomed into that family for sure. And so that's definitely been as a result of my publisher and JB and everybody, Mike G too. The other stuff too, Chase was because of Rakaya. Rakaya set up that Right with Chase Rice originally.
Yep.
And I think at that time, Chase was just looking to kind of take his stuff in a different direction. And me and JB wrote with him the first time. We wrote a song that's called Always Tomorrow that has never come out. But I think he just, when we wrote the first time, he trusted us that like after that, right, he was like, these guys could help me get where I want to go with the new stuff I want to do. And so Chase just took us on a bunch of retreats and trips and stuff and has been an awesome friend and buddy since then. Just from, we just clicked whenever we wrote and everything. And so, and same with Morgan, I think that the Morgan thing has definitely been helped by the publisher and the family aspect of Big Loud. But also I think at the end of the day, I think the songs that I truly love to write and that I think are the best songs that I write fit very well with what Morgan likes to do, And so I think it's just like this kind of like symbiotic thing where you're just like, everybody sees eye to eye on stuff. And so like, if I write a great song, Morgan's typically like also agrees that it's like good. And like, I think just because we see what we think is good is the same, I guess,
Yeah. It's not a
Similar
bad
taste.
thing, dude.
Yeah, it's great, and he's been such a good buddy to me and JB and everybody. I mean, that whole company, everybody involved in it they've taken us under their wings and made it a lot of things happen for us. So
yeah. What's your writing process? Are you more of a lyric guy or a melody?
Definitely, yeah. I started more as a lyric guy, I would say, for sure. Like lyrics, and I still think to this day, like lyrics are what inspires me originally. So like if I think of a phrase or a turn of phrase, that's what really gets the wheels turning in my head. But as time has gone on, I've definitely tried to become more of a Swiss Army knife, I guess, in the writing room. It's like to be able to just say like, okay, I'm with this person, and this person. They're good at this. They're good at this. I need to fill in the gaps and like, or sometimes take the reins. It's like, so it just depends. I want to be able to. My goal is to be able to go into any writing room and be able to like make sure that it goes as efficiently as it could with the people that are in it. And so, but I definitely do lean more towards lyric. But I definitely think melody has grown a little bit too. Primarily just because I learned how to do tracks before I got signed. Me and JB did, just because we were trying to make ourselves more marketable and everything. And so that really unlocked a lot of melody writing in my brain, because you're just sitting there playing instruments and you're just thinking of melodies. Yeah. And so that was really a big turning point for melody. But lyrics are still my core for sure.
Dive into that a little bit for everybody listening out there, because we've been doing this podcast for almost a year now, and I love diving into the stories behind the songs and all the how everybody got into it and all of that. There's not been a lot of conversation that I can remember about just beats and now, like, over the last several years, as Nashville writers have evolved and all of that, and the young guys are coming in with their new styles and all of that, that's a big part of it.
100%,
where a lot of the track guys and the beat guys are in the room. So can you dive in from your perspective for everybody listening out there and just explain what that even is?
For sure. Yeah. So, I mean, in my experience, it's been typically like the killer combination of people in a writing room for my situation is, if there's an artist, that's great. And then there's me, who would be like a top liner technically, which is lyric and melody based. And then you got a producer, somebody that's building out a musical bed that you can kind of write over top of. And so sometimes they've already got a track that's ready to go that you can kind of just get inspiration from. Sometimes it's just a guitar part that's like a loop. I mean, it's just a whole different thing. And the whole key of that is just something that's inspiring and something that gets the ball rolling, or can set the tone for, like, if you want it to sound up tempo, like they've got something that's ready to rip on that. And so that's very helpful in that way. And it also, I think originally it started financially, was really a big piece of it, I think, because publishers looked at it from like a demo perspective. They didn't have to pay for a demo. They could just have a guy that built it as a part of the write. And I think that made sense for them. But yeah, nowadays it's like, it's a essential part of it. I feel like a lot of the times, I mean, it's rare that people will just write with guitars, but I still like to do that way, because in the same kind of scenarios, like one of the ways where it's like kind of like a God thing, I feel like if you just are quiet, my process writing wise in its best form is when I'm able to just sit there and kind of be still and like hear things that kind of come out of the, like, I don't know, I guess it feels like it's from God, and so like that isn't as possible when there's a track rolling, but sometimes it is still too. But like my best songs, I think, come a lot of the times from still just a guitar and two other people with guitars,
Yeah.
But, and then you can build a track afterwards. So that's why me and JB learned to do it that way, because we were broke, didn't have enough money to pay for a demo session. So we were just like, all right, well, we got to learn how to do this. And so, but a lot of people that are coming up, I think, know how to do it nowadays, which is cool too.
Yeah.
So.
This episode is brought to you by Brit Skin Beauty. Located in the beautiful Indulgence Medi Spa in Mount Juliet, Tennessee, Brittany is the go-to esthetician for facials, dermaplaning, microdermabrasion, waxing, lashes, and any skincare products and consultations. So many people in the music industry use her frequently, and her work speaks for itself. To schedule your next consultation or make an appointment, visit britskinbeauty.com or send an email to britskinbeauty@gmail.com.
I mean, definitely, if you've got a producer in there that's, going to be a writer on the song, then good tracks come out of that.
Definitely.
So,
and I mean, it's uncanny how good some of those guys are. I mean, they're just making tracks that sound like they're ready to be on the radio, like in like 2.5 hours, and it's just amazing how fast some of those guys are and how talented a lot of them are too.
Yeah, you can literally leave a room.
Yeah.
and by the time you go grab lunch and get back home, you've got in your inbox, you've got like
full-blown track.
Basically, something that could go to radio.
100%.
Yeah. It still blows my mind. I mean, I'm still old school. I go into a room with most of the time it's just a couple guitars.
Definitely. Yeah.
And then AJ Cross I write with a lot.
Nice.
He'll bring in some track guys sometimes.
Yeah.
Which makes it fun. But
absolutely. Yeah.
It's a very cool process. So.
Absolutely, man. Yeah.
All right, let's get back into some stories, because hearing you play here, there's a couple of songs that I know you love to play, and I want to dive into another Morgan song. Let's talk about Sunrise.
Sunrise, yeah, that one's a good one, man. So that was me and JB again, same person that I wrote with 865 with. That was in the window of time. So as you know, I mean, like every artist kind of has a period of time leading up to where they're recording music, that they're listening to songs and trying to find the best ones. And so Morgan was in that phase of just like sifting through things. And so that's a good time for us. That was a good time for us to start writing a bunch of songs for him. And so me and JB, like that was our target. Like when we were writing Sunrise, we were like, we've got a like window opportunity. Let's see if we can write one for him. And so I had the idea. I actually threw it out the day that we wrote Lifestyle.
Okay.
Because we were sitting there when Ernest was, before he locked into that, I was like, I got this cool idea. I think it could be called Sunrise. And the whole idea is just like, it's just a metaphor. Like sunrise, you keep coming up. That's it. That was all I had. And I had a little bit of a melody and everything. But everybody kind of just like brushed it off in that room, which was fine. And whenever somebody does that, I always take it as like, okay, this isn't the right room. I'm just going to find.
Right.
I'm not willing to say that that's like a bad idea until I've done that a lot. And then everybody says it sucks.
Yeah.
But that one particularly, I had to write with JB coming up the next like Monday or whatever it was. And so I just told him about it. I was like, I think this could be really cool. And I was just like, I think it goes like this. Think this is what we do. And I had that like one lick that's in there. I don't know if I can play it. It's probably at this point, I'm trying to remember what it even sounds like. But like the whole idea was just like that one, like and that was kind of an inspiration. Charlie, who I write with a lot now, like Charlie's a melodic guitar player, and he's very like he's the same guy that wrote like Last Night. He's written most of Morgan's hits. He plays guitar in a way that it's like it's almost like an additional hook, an additional melody that you're gonna get for free in the guitar part. And so that was like I was sitting down, I was like, let's try and do that. Let's try to find something that's like really cool, melodic, and everything that we can have as the foundation. So we just played that lick and then looped it and wrote that song. I remember we finished like a verse chorus, and me and JB are just buddies, so it's like we don't have to finish the song or anything. Like typically, like if we don't and it's good, then we're just gonna call each other on the phone or finish it somehow. And so that one in particular, we got a verse chorus, and JB thinks it's one of the best stories. It's a good one because like he called me up when we were finishing him. He was changing his oil on his truck, like underneath his truck, literally like he's on his phone with his dad. And we were going back and forth on the second verse, how to do it. And like, literally, I think I was just driving down the road, and like he was under his truck fixing his oil and stuff. And that's when we finished the second verse on it and everything. And then after that, we just sang a vocal on it and sent it in. And it literally, that one was like, wrote it, and about 3 weeks later, it was recorded because that was that window of time. Like we timed it right and everything. So it worked out well.
That's 2 songs now that you've basically written or finished on the phone, right? Like that you've told me about, like the Zoom and then that.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool. That doesn't happen a lot. I mean, have you done that a lot?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, it's just one of those things that sometimes you get just so, it's hard to get people in the same place consistently to come back to something. And so like, if it's like a time crunch like that was, we knew that there were specific dates on the calendar that Morgan needed songs, or he was going to record songs. And we were like, we got to get it done. And so like, it was just like, I don't remember what time of day it was. It could have been a weekend. Who knows? We just like, I just remember, I think it was whenever one of us had the inspiration for whatever the second verse could be, we just called each other and we were like, hey, this is what I think we could do. And then we pieced it together. Like, and it doesn't take long when you do it that way. Like it takes, you're usually, generally speaking, trying to get off the phone, you know? So you're like, okay, well, what if we did it this way? And then you ramp it up and do it quick, it's kind of a fun way to do it. I've done that with like, I mean, even people like Ashley Gorley and I have done that together on the phone where we've written a whole song on the phone just because it's like, he'll say like, I got an idea for whatever. And then you just try and it's like fast. It usually is like a 20 to 30 minute thing. and you're not even holding a guitar or like you're just talking about lyrics and saying like da 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 da, like you're just singing random melodies.
Yeah.
But it ends up working out a lot of the time.
I love it, man. Your publisher did that with a huge smash.
Yeah.
Craig Wiseman.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. I heard this was years ago, but I heard the story. I can't remember if he told me or Tim Nichols, but the story about Live Like You Were Dying.
Oh yeah.
Where Craig and Tim were on the phone.
Really?
Both of them at night laying on the floor because they both had like old school like phones with cords.
Wow.
Like
That's
no cell
awesome.
phones, right? Like, and they're laying on the phone or laying on the floor and wrote that song. I think maybe they started it earlier in the day or something like that, and then one of them had to go. And
wow.
But they finished Live Like You Were Dying on the floor. Ask them about it.
That makes sense. You know, I mean, I would have never guessed that though. That's amazing.
Yeah. Man, that's cool. So, let's talk about just the industry as a whole for a minute. Because you've been in town long enough to kind of see things change and, kind of go through the cycle. Like, what would you say for you the biggest challenges right now in country music?
Man, I think for me, I've had to get used to I've been published now. Literally today, I think is like the 3-year anniversary of me signing my first publishing deal. And so and since then, I've had like a lot of good success and everything. I think I've had to get used to the idea of like, there comes a point where you're a writer and instead of having things to kind of gain inspiration from that are coming out, you're writing the things that are coming out. And so like that has been a flip for me to be able to like, instead of saying, oh, they went here, you can take it this next level. It's almost saying like, okay, well, where do we want to go from, where do I just decide that the songwriting world could go? Because I'm kind of like in a position where I can now just write stuff that I want to write and hopefully it comes out and everything. But that's a different thing. There's a little bit less inspiration to gain from because I guess as you write more songs, it's hard to be inspired by yourself, Like it's easier to be inspired by other people. So that's one thing is the industry as a whole. I mean, the challenging things a lot of the time I think are just the same, the competitiveness of it all, and like the campiness. I think there's a lot of that, but it's also like, I think there's a bit of more of like LA presence in Nashville now, which is like, it's kind of like, it's changing a little bit of the way that people are interacting. And I think that.
In what way? What do you mean?
I think that Nashville's a bit more like communal in the sense of like, it's like your crew of people.
Yep.
And I think that there's like a LA model, which is great. I think it's an awesome thing, but it's a little bit more like strategic and like, it's not like bring everybody up. It's more of like, we can do this and write hits here. And like, it's more strategic and targeted like that, which is interesting. I think it's going to be interesting to see how that changes the Nashville culture as it becomes more prominent because country as a genre and as a format, I think is getting more popular. And so as that happens, more people want to be involved in it,
Yeah.
And so I think that over time, I hope that the family aspect of like, all of the companies and everything stays the same and it doesn't get diluted with like just like success at all costs, And so I think that's an important thing to remember is that like there's more to it than just success, I guess. And so I think that's probably one of the challenges is just maintaining that culture that Nashville's built on.
Yeah, that's interesting. I agree. I mean, I think that's one of the things that hit me the most when I first moved here is just there's still that competitiveness, right? Like you still want a number one and you want like, and if you like, you don't have a number one and your best friend has a number one, it's like, dang man, I want that, you know, but at the same time, like you're giving them a hug and like, dude, great job. You know, it's like, and it's very rare. Like, it's, we've both been here for a long time. You a little over 10, me a little over 20.
Yeah.
Like, it's, you kind of like, I think at least for me, like after being here for so long, you kind of start to take that for granted.
Absolutely.
Because it is just a culture here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But you go outside of Nashville and you're right. It's a lot different in other markets, LA, Austin, New York, like, where it's more campy and, kind of out for your own.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that makes sense when like my experience with like the LA world and people from there, it makes sense why that is that way because it's a little bit like people do, you kind of have to like hold on to what you have and like you can't like just be as generous, it seems like, in that world, which I think I don't know how Nashville was built on that, where it's like built on a community and how it's lasted as long as it has. But that's just one of those things that, from like a purist songwriter standpoint, I hope that never changes in Nashville, because I think talking about like people like Craig Wiseman and those guys, like I think that culture has been there since before them.
Yeah, for sure.
It's almost been just like, it's bigger than any of us individually as songwriters, you know, that culture is. And so I think that's one of those things I hope never changes.
Yeah, I do too. You know, there's so many people coming here from California, but we're also seeing like Shane McAnally and like, you know, guys like that are salt of the earth, like great songwriters,
definitely
great producers, but also very humble and like, and, you know, kind of like live that feeling of community like we have here in Nashville, that are moving to California. You know, and it'll be interesting to see what happens to Nashville in the next 5 to 10 years. As well as like what happens in LA as like more people are, you know, like going out there too.
For sure.
So, it's
for sure. I think it's a cool, like, one of the things I've noticed, like, there's one, like, Charlie is a good example. Charlie's got his hand in so many different genres and everything, and he's got a pretty good model of it all. He's like, if he's doing rap stuff, he runs his sessions and stuff by rap rules. If he's doing it pop session, then it's like, there's different business practices too that come along with like each different world. You know, like in Nashville, we split up songs equally no matter who writes what.
Right.
In like LA, they do it a bit more like, this, I contributed this, you contributed this is what the splits are, you know? And like, I think that it's almost just like if I go to LA, I'm going to write by LA rules. You know, it's like it just goes back and forth like that. I think that's like a somewhat important thing, to just respect the differences that we have and glean what the benefits of each of them are, you know? Yeah.
Respect. I love that.
Yeah.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah. All right. I think we've got time to probably dive into one more song.
Yeah.
So, man, you pick. You've got so many.
Man, trying to think.
Ain't That Some, or, you know, get off of Morgan and hit another one. What do you think has a great story that you can walk us through and then play a little bit of it?
I think one of the other great stories I have that is off of the Morgan thing, but there's Key West in Colorado as a Chase Rice song that I wrote.
Yeah.
And that is another one where it's just unconventional where you wrote it. And like it was me, JB, Hunter Phelps, and Corey Crowder, and Chase, and Brian Kelly are all on that song. 6 people.
Yeah.
A lot of people. And everybody besides, it was like pretty much just a retreat. We were going down in Grayton Beach.
Yeah.
And the whole premise of it was just having a good time at the beach and writing songs at the same time. And so the one day in particular, BK, Brian Kelly, just asked us to come out on his boat and hang out. And we weren't planning on writing when we were there. We just were going to go out on the boat and have fun.
Yeah.
And when we got out, we went to a place called Crab Island, which is like a sandbar in the middle of the ocean. And so we're sitting there, and probably like 30 minutes into the whole time out there, it just starts thunderstorming like crazy and just pouring down rain. And so we can't do anything besides like sit and wait for the storm to pass. And so everybody's like, well, why don't we just try and write a song? And so like we pull out guitars, and Chase had, I think, BK had this like journal or something that Chase had like read accidentally. That was like sitting on his like kitchen counter.
Yeah, how do you accidentally read a journal?
It was on his like kitchen counter, and like Chase thought it was like a song idea, but like he was just looking at it.
I love this, dude.
And I think it had like something about Key West in it or something.
Yeah.
And I think that was the premise of like how that whole thing started. And like we just wrote a story. Like Chase had just done like a whole trip from Key West to Colorado, and like we just kind of drafted off of Chase's life, like the idea of like how he just goes all the way around and like travels around. And like, so we sat there in the thunderstorm on a boat. Like the voice memo of it's literally got rain pouring down in the background and like us just singing and like with one guitar, and we just wrote that song. And so like that song was not like a radio hit or anything, or like a big, huge, like not as many people know that one, but that one is definitely like one of the best stories that we have. Cause I mean, again, it's just people having fun, and then songs happen, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's hear part of it.
Yeah. Let's see. That one is way up here, capo-wise.
Do you want me to add some rain effects while you're playing?
Yeah, there we go. Had a guy named Tony down in San Antonio, said the best kind of love is like a rodeo. When you get bucked off, you climb back on. Keep jukebox spinning like a country song. Rolled into Missoula where nobody knew you. Met a brand new girl, but I swore I was talking to you. So I hit the coast and I blew some smoke. Found a brand new way to say adios. Somewhere between Key West and Colorado, I found God in a gold Silverado. Had to get a little lost to get a little found. Learned you can't find love if you can't slow down. Somewhere between that sand and the snow, salt in the air and salt on the road, I finally let myself let her go. Somewhere between Key West and Colorado.
Yeah, man. I love it, dude.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, as we wrap up, I always end with the same question.
Okay.
So let's go back to 8-year-old Blake in North Carolina.
Yeah.
Now, everything that you've learned from being here and all the cuts, you're able to go back to 8-year-old self. What advice do you give yourself today?
Man, 8-year-old me. I think that the advice would be to focus on the things outside of the music more than the music. Because like those things, I think ultimately both lead to success in music and also give you the fulfillment from the music as you're going along the journey. You know, I think that like finding the friends that you like truly believe in and you want to succeed with and doing things like that is more, that's I think when I'm 85 years old, speaking to 85-year-old Blake, I think that's what he's going to look back and be proud of, you know? And so I think telling the 8-year-old me to just chase the things that matter more than all of the glory, you know,
Man,
and
that's
not
so
just
good.
number ones and like all the metrics that, I mean, I think we get all tangled up with as songwriters and then people in professional worlds in general. I think that stuff can get blinding to an extent. Distractions from the opportunities to see what else you got, you know, and like that stuff's more important at the end of the day.
I love it, man.
Yeah.
Well, keep doing that.
Yeah.
Keep building that friendship because you're doing it right, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being here, and we're excited to always have you play here at the listening room stage.
Thanks for having me all the times. Yeah.
We'll keep watching the success and have you back on this podcast.
I appreciate
some point
it.
down the road.
Thank you, Chris.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, for listening out there. We will put some liner notes in on how you can follow Blake. Just keep spreading the word. We appreciate it. We've been doing this for almost a year, y'all. Almost a year. I can't believe it. So thank you for listening and supporting this podcast. We appreciate you all. This has been another episode of Stories Behind the Songs with Blake Pendergrass. We'll see you next time. Thank you for listening to another episode of Stories Behind the Songs with Chris Blair. Make sure to give us a follow on Spotify if you enjoyed this episode, and make sure you click that notification button so you can keep notified when new episodes come out. We release brand new episodes every Tuesday, and you can find us on YouTube at Stories Behind the Songs with Chris Blair or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Don't forget to send us a comment letting us know what you thought of the episodes. We love getting your feedback, and share this with your friends. The more we grow, the more that we can keep doing this. It's our mission to bring you all of these great stories behind the songs from some of Nashville's most iconic artists and songwriters, publishers, producers, everyone in between, and a lot of my great friends. We love what we do, and we love sharing their stories with you. We appreciate all of the continued support. Thanks also to all of our sponsors, and we will see you all next week.